Hey everyone, this is Jagz here, and welcome to the very first episode about health. Today we'll be discussing everything from dietary restrictions to weight gain, if you are struggling to gain weight, kind of like how I am. What are some different methods you can do to go ahead and help yourself build yourself up and actually gain that weight you are looking for. Maybe you're trying to look to lose weight. We'll be discussing a little bit about that as well, different techniques you can use to go ahead and help satisfy your needs to go ahead and lower that weight for you. Some other things we're going to be discussing about is about vitamin intake. What vitamins or supplements should I be taking based upon health conditions, based upon your size, your height, what different things we're going to be looking at. That everything does tie in, so we might get a little bit more into that. Obviously we can't go too much into detail about that, considering I am not a doctor, I am not a physician, I cannot go ahead and prescribe anything like that, so I'm just going to be discussing a little bit more about certain things I have to take based upon the requirements of myself. Obviously everything's going to vary based upon from person to person, so please be aware of that. Another thing we're going to be discussing about is how to get the protein you need being vegetarian or vegan. Other things we're going to be discussing about is a little bit more about mental health. We're going to be looking at ADD today and how it affects your body, your mind. We're going to learn about different coping methods and how it affects your body overall, how it can possibly cause emotional issues, how it definitely has an effect on learning. And the last couple of ones we're going to be discussing about is going to be about emotional health, how you can go ahead and overcome everything you might be going through. That definitely will tie in along the lines of stress and anxiety as well. But another big important topic we would be discussing today, besides being vegan or vegetarian and those dietary restrictions, that's going to go more into depth about sugars and stuff like that as well. But we're also going to be taking a look at gluten-free diets as well. Now, this is something that my wife is personally going through. It's something she has to take a look at and try to figure out a little bit more based upon how she started, how she's kind of learned over a period of time to go ahead and better herself, and it's actually been drastically improving her health, which is fantastic. But another thing we're also going to be looking at as well, instead of ADD, as far as mental health goes, we're going to be looking at OCD as well. There's still a lot of things that we need to learn about ADD and OCD. They can very well tie in together in some cases, but obviously they both have their own forms of issues and concerns we try to go ahead and overcome. So just to get right into everything here, let's go right into let's get right into dietary restrictions, actually. So, as far as dietary restrictions go, we're going to be kind of looking everything a little bit more of... I'm going to be talking about myself a little bit more and the things I have to do to go ahead and make sure that I don't get sick, make sure my body is to where it should be, and how to keep improving my body over... all the time in the world, pretty much. I just want to be able to stay healthy. I want to be able to keep my energy levels up, and sometimes that can be very difficult. Now, as far as me being an individual that I am, the things I have to do as far as being a vegetarian, now the only reason why I decided to choose being a vegetarian is more along the lines of... it's very difficult for me to go just full-blown vegan, only because there's certain things that I would personally like to keep in my diet, especially once it comes down to sources of protein. Now, one of the largest sources of protein and that big extra boost is going to be coming from eggs. Now, obviously, you can't eat eggs or any kind of product or byproduct that comes from an animal if you decide to be vegan. But based upon my dietary restrictions, I felt like personally this is something I wasn't able to give up only based upon that specific reason. I do need a little bit of extra protein. Now, that's not saying I don't get a lot of protein from other items as well. Now you might be asking, well, what other source of protein could there possibly be besides meat or eggs or anything along the lines of that? Well, as most of you know, a lot of them also come from all plant-based products. In this case, the main one that a lot of people are aware of is spinach. But now there's a lot of other ones that you can obtain your protein from, such as beans. Satan was kind of more of along the lines of tofu, edamame, lentils, chickpeas, tempeh, hemp seed, quinoa, any kind of sprouted grains such as Ezekiel bread, soy milk, any oats, oatmeal, any form of wild rice, chia seeds, nuts, broccoli, asparagus, artichokes, potatoes, sweet potatoes. There are so many different forms of food that I can actually personally eat that has a very decent size of protein. Now, a lot of them might not have as much as others. That's why I have to go ahead and a lot of times kind of put them together and mix all these ingredients together so I can get that extra source of protein that my body needs, so I can go ahead and continue on my day keeping my energy levels up. Now, with this being said, it should be pretty obvious that since I am vegetarian, there is no meat in my diet whatsoever. Now, once it comes down to meat in general, it is something I have stated in the past, but in this case, it's just more along the lines of my body cannot properly break down the proteins and nutrients that meat has. Since it can't do that, it stirs up a different chemical reaction in my body, which ends up leading more towards excessive sweating. In that case, it's kind of my body's own natural form of an auto detox. So I do go through random stages throughout the time where my body starts detoxing. So step one is usually just automatically, like within maybe, we're talking probably within the first 1 to 2 minutes, my body starts sweating profusely. It starts going crazy. The second thing is you have that buildup of stomach pains and cramps. Those end up becoming very, very aggressive over time. It does build up within usually it actually builds up within increments of at least 5 minutes. Now, that might seem like, a very short period of time. You're like, really, that's building up in that short period of time? Specifically for me, yes. It does build up within increments of 5 minutes. It's something I have noticed over time. Now, obviously, this is going to vary based upon person, based upon your dietary restrictions, based upon the supplements you're taking. There could be other things out there that go ahead and very well help your digestive system be able to break down those enzymes and everything properly. Whereas for me, it cannot do that regardless of what I take or what I do. It just decides to ignore all that because it's just too intense of a feeling, and especially since I haven't eaten meat now for, I would say, closer to 5 years now, I believe. So it definitely has been a while. So because of all of that, it starts going into, like I mentioned, the sweating. Then I go into the severe stomach cramps and pains. After that, my muscles do also have a tendency to cramp up a lot more. So I could very well be experiencing Charlie horses here and there. Really bad headaches, an extreme feeling of nausea. There would be a lot of times where I would just constantly be throwing up from it as well and won't be able to stop. Obviously, for me, that takes its own toll because it's obviously not something I want to do, because the more you throw up, obviously, then you have all the possibilities like, okay, now you're going to lose weight, you're losing a lot of fluids and everything. You got to try to get that intake back in you. Problem is, you feel so miserable to the point where you don't even feel like you can drink water. Drinking water during that stage, or any stages I should say in that case, make me feel nauseous actually even drinking water. So I can't get the fluids back in me to go ahead and actually maintain non-drowsiness, making sure I don't black out and stuff like that as well. So that's why I really, really try to stay away from any meat product at all, and that goes along the lines of red meat or any form of poultry. Now, as far as fish goes, it's a little bit more iffy, only because for me, there are forms of fish I will eat. Now, I know this is going to be for a whole completely different topic and session for my videos here, but just to kind of go into it a little bit more now, just based upon my religious background being Jewish, I just so happen to be brought up with eating gefilte fish, which is more of a mixture between whitefish and pike. Now, I've been eating that since I was very, very young. It's something my grandmother kind of always made for me, so it's something I always ate. And it's something I still do eat from time to time because it doesn't make me sick. It's something that I was brought up with. It definitely is a required taste. So if you haven't tried it before and you're interested, definitely give it a try. But definitely do remember it is definitely a required taste. I'm not getting much into it only because there's no need for that right now, at least. But yeah, fish is a little iffy. Certain things I could eat. Tuna, I could probably honestly still continue eating. The only reason why I decide not to eat it is because of the levels of mercury usually found within tuna. Obviously, I don't want that in my body, and I really don't want mercury kind of swimming around in my veins, because I don't know the effects it could have on me. All I know is there's no possible way for that to be good for my body at all, so I just try to stay away from that. So it's mainly red meat and poultry that have these symptoms and effects on my body. Now, there have been multiple points in time where I have ate a piece of chicken or red meat. This was way before I even started wanting to be getting into being a vegetarian. I wasn't fully aware of the different precautions and everything I had to take that my body just couldn't handle anymore. And the last time I personally remember eating any form of meat, all the stages and symptoms, everything I mentioned before, everything happened one right after the other, exactly in said order. But the problem is, over time, it didn't go away. It didn't stop. It lasted for hours. And there's been points in time where it has lasted for just the rest of the day. From the time I ate that product to the end of the day, and sometimes I would not even be able to sleep. I would just be throwing up. And it was just a complete awful time for me anytime something like that happened. So it did feel like from time to time I had to be sent to the hospital as well. Now, you're going to be hearing that pretty frequently from me based upon my dietary restrictions and everything, because my body is so super sensitive to the slightest things. It literally makes me feel like I'm not getting any fluids in me. I feel like I'm instantly dehydrated. I can't get water back in my body. It's just not a good time. It's something I want to avoid at all possible costs. So kind of going a little bit more, branching off of that a little bit. I did mention already about all the different sources of protein that's out there. Hopefully for anyone out there who might be vegetarian like I am, that might be a little bit more, that might eat a little fish here and there. Like I said, I just try not to. As far as the gefilte fish goes, I haven't eaten that in a good couple of years as well. In all honesty, I don't really see a point in continue eating it, only because there's really no need. It doesn't make me feel great when I eat it. It doesn't make me feel like I've gained anything or any form of nutrition from eating it. And it doesn't make me feel terrible as well. It's kind of more than just that neutral state. So in that case, there's really no reason for me to continue eating that. So I'm just going to try my best to go ahead and just cut out all fish altogether. I've never been a big fan of seafood and anything anyway, so there's really no point of me continue eating it. Now, another thing I would like to discuss a little bit more is about dairy products. Now, just from me doing my research over time, and obviously seeing the firsthand effects on my body when I ate dairy, or consumed dairy in this matter, is it always had a strange effect on my body. Now, what it didn't, when it started off, it didn't always make me feel sick or ill. It actually was recognized by my mother, actually realizing every time I consumed dairy in any way possible, it ended up putting very dark, heavy bags underneath my eyes, basically like it was an allergic reaction. That's how I actually personally found out I was lactose intolerant. Not something I knew. I was brought up with dairy. I had dairy almost every single day when I was a kid, but yet again, I also had meat a lot when I was younger as well. I still never really ate fish, but the meat and dairy were the two big ones that I was really into when I was younger. I was able to eat everything as far as burgers, hot dogs, steaks. I drank milk. I had a lot of cheese. Obviously, pizza was a big one in there and everything as well. But over time, I found out that specifically here for dairy, I could not do it anymore. It had such a bad effect on my body over time. Now, it just started off with the bags under my eyes, but it got to the point where it started affecting my train of thought. I realized that it was kind of harder for me to think a little bit more. I never really felt happy when I was eating it. I kind of felt down. Now, just as a side note as well, the same effects actually did happen anytime I ate meat as well. I ended up feeling really tired. I ended up feeling like I had no motivation to do anything. But the same thing happened with dairy as well. And the other issue is that every time I consumed dairy, it would make me get into this state of mind that kind of really didn't make any sense for me. I felt just completely drained altogether. Now, which really didn't make much sense because I couldn't figure out how a form, just eating pizza or eating cheese in general, if you're making like a grilled cheese sandwich or something like that, or even my personal favorite when I was younger was mac and cheese. I couldn't figure out what it was that was really causing my body to go through these issues and these symptoms. Obviously, I had to do a process of elimination there. And yeah, unfortunately, over time, I kind of put my body through a lot of stress continuing to eat dairy and to drink dairy. So I definitely did learn the hard way. I felt like it was kind of necessary at this point in time because it did teach me quite a lot about what I shouldn't be doing. Now, as far as dairy goes, you might be hearing a lot of things along the lines of how dairy causes cancer, how it causes a buildup of mucus in your system, so it kind of feels like you can't really swallow properly, kind of feel like your throat's kind of like inflamed a little bit. Now, as far as the cancer thing, I mean, a lot of things cause cancer now, and it is very unfortunate. But obviously, this is something that I would have to look a little bit more into. It's not something I'm 100% familiar with. It's just some things I've been told and some things I've heard over time saying that it does. But as far as the buildup of mucus and everything as well, I know for a fact 100% that is true because every time, for example, my father would eat dairy, that's what build up a lot of mucus. In that case, he starts snoring more. Well, you do the math. Obviously, there's a buildup in your body. You're all congested. You should not be having dairy, or for that specific individual. In my case, I did the same thing as well. I had to build up a mucus. I realized I had a more difficult time breathing in general. Obviously, that's a very scary thought process, and especially when you're going through it in general. Only because I've never had those symptoms before. I didn't understand what was going on, and I realized like I just could not catch my breath, and it did terrify me. So obviously I'm going to do what I can to go ahead and make sure I actually can breathe properly, make sure my body feels like it is gaining enough oxygen as it should. So I just completely cut off all dairy straight up. I want nothing to do with it. It's just gotten worse over time. There's no reason for me to do it. Like I said as well, though, there are going to be certain individuals that are going to be like, well, how difficult was it for you to go ahead and give up meat? How difficult was it for you to give up dairy? Being the two hardest things for a lot of people to give up. Now, for me, giving up meat, it actually wasn't that difficult, to be honest. Like I said, it can vary based upon who you are and how much you've eaten it, how much you love it. So it definitely is going to vary, but for me, it wasn't terrible. Now, I feel like for me, it might have been a little bit easier because it started off with my brother being vegetarian, and then he went into being vegan. After that, my parents started following that route as well. So they started off being pescatarian, actually. And then after that, they went to vegetarian, and now a little bit more into vegan as well. Now, they do have their own dietary restrictions. They are similar to mine as well. So that kind of goes along the lines of none of us eat meat. They all kind of make us feel the exact same way. Obviously, the symptoms will vary, but it's kind of the same road there on how everything kind of affects them, or us, I should say, in this matter. As far as dairy products, the last one to actually cut out dairy was my father, only because, like I mentioned, the more of the congestion, having that hard, difficult time breathing at night. So he tried cutting that out a little bit more as well. Over time, he's been feeling significantly better. What a surprise. He realized that he should not be eating it. He's been feeling like he's had more energy over time. All of our diets kind of consist of the same meals, kind of. There's been a lot of new products and everything coming out now. That is just fantastic that we are able to eat. So obviously we have a wider variety of options and choices now for ourselves, which is great. Because when we first started, there wasn't much out there. We felt like here they didn't really have the choices that we were looking for, or the options as far as being a vegetarian or a vegan. It was definitely a lot more difficult because a lot of products, they do contain byproducts of fish. They might contain just fish in general, especially a lot of sauces. A lot of things as far as even bread or pretzels or anything along the lines of that. A lot of those things that I personally love and will never give up. A lot of them do have milk in them, which is actually quite surprising. Milk and dairy products can be found in almost every single product you can possibly imagine. And I had no idea that that was even a thing. By the time I realized I couldn't eat dairy, and the more I started focusing on the nutritional labels and everything like that to make sure that I don't get sick, I realized more and more of how many products contain dairy. And that honestly drove me crazy, because a lot of my favorite foods that I like to eat over, when I was a child, even till today, I can no longer eat because every single one of them have dairy. A lot of, for example, for the first time ever, I found out not too long ago that red sauce, basic marinara that you put on pizza and everything, a lot of people put milk in their red sauces on pizza, or it's just made with milk. And I had no idea that was a thing. I always thought it was just basic red, like maybe tomato sauce, marinara. Maybe they stuck some like basil and other, herbs and spices in there. I thought that's all it was. But I went to one restaurant, I don't remember the name of it though, and I started eating it. Oh, I had pizza that day, and I didn't think of anything of it at the time, because why would I? And I ended up getting the bags under my eyes. I started feeling all the symptoms that I mentioned early on just before. And I couldn't understand. I'm like, I ate nothing wrong. There was no cheese on it. I just had a pizza with the red sauce on there with some veggies. And I couldn't figure out. I'm like, how am I getting sick from this? So I had to actually go up to one of the servers and asked him, was like, is there any dairy in this at all? And I'm like, I'm actually not feeling well. And they went over the ingredients and everything, and it turns out that their red sauce had dairy in it. And I couldn't believe that, because like, what place puts milk in their sauce in general? Wouldn't make any sense. Depending, like, if it was a different sauce, then sure. If they wanted a little bit more creamier or thicker, yeah, I get it. But normally red sauce is just strictly red sauce. There's nothing else in there besides the spices and herbs and everything. It made no sense. So everywhere I go now, I have to ask, and it seems ridiculous because a lot of people look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, you know, why would you ask if there's milk in our sauces? Like, clearly there's not. And I'm like, well, I had to explain to them that story, that I just so happened to find a place that did. And when I tell them about that, they just honestly, it's kind of mind-boggling to them, because no one expects that at all. No one expects you to just randomly put dairy in random things, but it's become such a custom to, I feel like, culture now almost, where people, and this is just my opinion now, feel free to disagree with me, because obviously a lot of people are going to be disagreeing with me, but it's the fact that I feel like cheese and any dairy product in general is very, very addictive. It's almost like a drug, in my opinion. That was the hardest thing for me to overcome and to stop eating. I hated it. I actually went through withdrawals. And that's why I feel like it was more of a drug. I had such a hard time getting off of it. I didn't want to, because like I felt like I was just like, I don't want to get rid of cheese. I love pizza. I love grilled cheese sandwiches. I love mac and cheese. I don't want to give that stuff up. Like, I loved yogurt. I love everything about it. But trying to get over it was so bad. I remember just constantly craving it more and more as each and every single day passed by. And, you know, the more I think about it right now, it's just, it is a drug, in my opinion. There's something in it that makes you addicted to it, that makes you want more. Now, like I said, feel free to completely disagree with me on that, but based upon my own personal experience there, I'm pretty sure anytime you go through withdrawals, or anytime you start craving something so much more than ever before when you're trying to stop, that's usually a good indication and sign that you are addicted to something. If you're addicted to something, usually that's kind of a drug effect. So, I mean, it was just the worst thing having to cut that, especially once it came down to ice cream. Now, that was absolutely terrible. I loved ice cream more than anything in the world. I love all desserts in general. I love it, but knowing now that I can't have dairy, or, well, haven't been knowing that I can't eat or consume dairy, yeah, it has been very difficult journey for me. It did take quite a while for me to actually overcome a lot of obstacles as far as not eating or consuming any of these products anymore. But I do gotta say, after a good couple of months actually not eating any of or consuming any of these products, whether it's poultry, red meat, or dairy, I've realized that I've actually been having a significant more amount of energy, actually, after being vegetarian. Now, I don't know if it was just specifically for me that felt that way, or if other people have felt that way before as well. But it is crazy to know that I felt like I had so much more energy. I felt more alive than I ever had before. I actually had motivation to actually go back to the gym. I've had more motivation to go outside and do stuff, be more active. Like I said, it could have just been my mindset. It could have just been the way my body reacted. It's hard to tell. There's a lot of different variables to be looking at. But specifically for me, that's just how I felt. And it felt amazing. So obviously, I didn't want to change that. It felt the most alive I ever felt, literally ever. And so I just continued down the route of being vegetarian. I tried for a little bit, like I mentioned, I tried being vegan, I just couldn't do it. So being vegetarian's fine. I'm still getting all the protein I need. I'm still getting all the vitamins I need. I'm still getting every form of, I guess, yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to say because there's so many different things I specifically need that I really have to break down. If I were really to break everything down one by one, it would take a while. But for everyone listening here, please let me know in the bottom of the comments if you do want to hear a little bit more about that. A different thing, like literally going more into detail about what I have to do in order to get all the dietary, I guess, supplements and vitamins and everything I specifically need in order for me to actually sustain my body, to make sure everything is going well. Because let's be honest, you cannot just live off of the products I mentioned before that give you protein. There's so many things that I do eat daily, obviously, all my veggies, all the fruits and grains and everything like that as well. But a lot of the time, specifically for me, it's just not enough. Obviously, you're also going to have to be looking at if you have any deficiencies or anything like that, if you have to add in something else that you might just not have any choice. So if you want to hear a little bit more about that, yeah, like I mentioned, let me know down below in the comments. I'll definitely be more than happy to talk about that with you guys. Hopefully helping you a little bit more of maybe some different research topics that we can find together to go ahead and actually really help ourselves out a little bit more. But before I end here, I do have a couple of minutes left. The last thing I do want to discuss about for myself, and because the next episode we're going to be discussing a little bit more about mental health. Actually, we're going to go more into ADD and OCD and everything along the lines of that. Actually, you know what? Before we actually do that, the next topic I do want to stay in the realm of dietary needs. Only because I would like my wife to go ahead and actually kind of talk about her experience, like I mentioned before earlier on this video, about being gluten-free. So there's a lot of restrictions that she has to take a look at and notice in order for her to continue being healthy and to make sure she maintains her body in a proper fashion, sorry. But yeah, just before I get off topic here and continue talking about that, but I know I can't because that's for another video. The last thing I do want to talk about is sugar here. And so sugar for me, it is a little iffy because there is a huge difference between processed foods and sugars based upon all natural, organic, raw sugars. I mean, if you're taking a perfect example, if you're taking a classic Coca-Cola to the Mexican Coke that's out there now, one's a lot more processed, there's a lot more syrup and everything in there, which adds in a lot of fake sugars. I know a lot of them tend to actually put like Splenda and stuff in that now, which my body cannot handle because I'm allergic to that as well. Just makes me go to the bathroom beyond belief. Whereas raw sugar or organic cane sugar, it's not as bad on me. I still can't have as much because they are both very sweet to me. My body has a very hard time with sweetness in general. It has a weird reaction if I overdo it to the point where my body's like, once again, you're feeling those muscle cramps. You're feeling everything tense up a lot more. You do get a little bit of nausea in there. Sometimes I've gotten a little lightheaded, and you know that feeling when you stand up too quick and your vision just kind of blacks out on you? I get those as well. Obviously, that's because of blood rush or you might have a increase or decrease of blood sugar issues, but that's a whole nother thing as well that I'll discuss at another time. But anything that's organic, raw sugar, or cane sugar, within limit, just like anything else in this world, you have to be very careful on what you consume, especially for me. Now, if I drink an entire bottle of Mexican Coke, I do end up getting sick. if I drink an entire can of normal Coca-Cola, I still get sick. I cannot do it. So I have to have a very small amount. Now, from time to time, it does get difficult for me because just like dairy, in my opinion, I feel like sugars are as well as definitely a form of, or could be quoted as a drug, only because it is very addictive. Your body wants more of it. You get a huge adrenaline rush from consuming certain forms of sugar. And because it's not the best sugar a lot of the times, your body will automatically go into a hardcore crash, and you end up feeling absolutely terrible by the end of the time that adrenaline rush surpasses. And so I went through that more than a couple of times, but I still drink soda every now and then. I just got to learn not to overdo it. There's certain ones I just cannot drink because they're a lot heavier in sugars, such as Dr. Pepper, Mountain Dew. I've never really liked Sprite in general. It never really tasted like anything to me. I always thought, well, I might as well just drink seltzer because, one, it's better for me, and two, it's just, there's literally no reason. But yeah, it's just little things I wanted to go based upon as far as sugar goes, because it's very complicated. Now, if you did want to hear a little bit more about this on the side as well, if there's anything else you guys want me to break down, as far as if the topic about meat consumption, all those different things, anything along the lines of dairy, fish, anything more about proteins, anything about vitamins and supplements that you might need, or anything like I just mentioned about sugars and what it can do to your body. If you want to know more, please go ahead, comment down below. I'll be more than happy to talk to you guys about this. But until then, that is all the time I have for today, and I will see you guys in episode 2, and we will be discussing a little bit more about being gluten-free or gluten-free sensitive, and then all the different things we have to go ahead and do based upon those restrictions, and then we will continue on from there. I did mention as well, we're going to be discussing after that more about mental health. So we'll be talking about ADD and OCD. But until then, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for listening so much. I hope to hear back from you with a lot of questions, and hopefully I can answer them to the best of my knowledge and my ability. So see you guys later, and have a great day.